Welcome to The Sideshow.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of The Sideshow. Mike is going to be leading the charge today. Mike, why don't you let everybody know what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mark. Today we're going to be talking about a side from one of my favorite artists, and it is going to be side one of David Bowie's Station to Station.
Good one.
I think this is a important album in the repertoire of David Bowie, and we previously did a podcast on Bowie's album Hunky Dory, side one, and one of the I think that was a pivotal album in David Bowie's earlier career, and it really was him sort of stepping into his role as sort of the androgynous glam rocker right before he took on the Ziggy Stardust persona.
Yeah.
And we people, if they can watch that podcast to learn more about that album. But after that album Hunky Dory, came the Ziggy Stardust, the rise of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and the various and that's when David Bowie became really big as a touring artist. I shouldn't say really, it wasn't the biggest he got, but he became popular. He was an international rock star by that point. And, after the Ziggy Stardust album, the Aladdin Sane album came out. And that album maintained the Ziggy Stardust persona for the most part. A little raunchier guitar, a little more of a hard rock sound, but kind of perpetuated the Ziggy Stardust persona. Maybe not the Space Invader, but a little bit. You look at the graphics on the album and whatnot. And after that, the Diamond Dogs was the album that followed Aladdin Sane, and that's still Bowie was still the orange spiky haired Ziggy Stardust sort of persona. But the music sounded a little different. Songs like Diamond Dogs and Rebel Rebel still had that same song, but that got into this sort of Orwellian, themes and things like that. And by the time of the album that followed Diamond Dogs, Bowie still had the same look. He still had the red, orangish red hair, and whatnot. But he was starting to move away from the Ziggy Stardust phase. And that album was came out in early 1975, and it was recorded in Philadelphia. And Bowie had sort of taken a liking of late around that time to sort of soul music and Philadelphia. Bands like the OJs and stuff like that. There was a scene, a recording scene in Philadelphia at that time, and so he recorded the album there, and that was, some people refer to that album as plastic soul.
You're talking about Young Americans?
Young Americans.
Yeah.
But whatever label, however you want to describe the music that was on that album, there were two of those tracks on that album, one of which was the title track, Young Americans, and then Fame. And it's the first song and the last song on the album.
Yeah.
And Fame was his biggest. Young Americans got plenty of airplay.
Yeah.
But Fame was his first sort of massive U.S. hit. Because that's the first time I ever knowingly heard David Bowie was hearing Fame on the car radio, riding around with our mother. Going to the store, going to the swimming lessons at the Y or whatever it was. I recall thinking, this is strange. This is different. Blah, blah, blah.
It wasn't the Carpenters.
No, no, so David Bowie had moved away from the Ziggy Stardust persona to some extent, but he hadn't really established a new thing. He was kind of just evolving, and one of the things that happened after the release of the Young Americans album, and this is the next album, Station to Station, which was released in early 1976. This is the album that followed Young Americans. And one of the songs on this album, and one of the songs on side one that we're going to talk about is Golden Years, which was another big radio hit for David Bowie. And I can remember when I started to hear this on the radio, same kind of thing, would be in the car, being given a ride somewhere by usually our mother, might have been, it doesn't matter, in the car, listen to the radio. And I can remember hearing it and thinking, I was familiar with Fame, and I just kind of liked it. I liked that strange, odd syncopation, and just it kind of
had a boogie to it.
It captured my attention. And Golden Years, it was like, that just sounds different. It's like a song that's sort of cutting edge and retro at the same time.
Yeah.
And whatnot. And David Bowie, this was a transitional album, in my opinion, not unlike Hunky Dory was, because what this album really was the album that heralded the transformation of David Bowie from the androgynous glam rocker to the urbane European hipster. There's a number of reasons I say that, but he really didn't step fully into that role, kind of like he didn't really step into the Ziggy Stardust role until one album after Hunky Dory. The urbane European hipster really came into fruition on the album which follows this album, Station to Station, which was Low. And Low is the first album in the so-called Berlin trilogy, which David Bowie recorded in Berlin. There were 3 albums that were recorded in the late 70s in Berlin with the he was collaborating with Brian Eno for purposes of production, composition and just musical ideas. Eno also, he provided some background vocals and I assume he played some probably electronic instruments of some kind as well. But this is the album where he really stepped into that role. And it was 1975. This album was recorded in late 1975. The Young Americans album, which I referred to, was released early in 1975, and something happened in between, and that was David Bowie starred he was in a film that was shot during 1975, and that was a movie. It was a movie directed by Nicholas Roeg, who's a British film director, who most of his movies are a little bit left of center. Let's say. He was involved in the movie Performance, starring Mick Jagger. He directed the film Walkabout. And eventually he just Nicholas Roeg. He's a little left of center. I guess we can leave it at that.
We'll leave it there.
But the movie was called The Man Who Fell to Earth. And if people want to see it, they should just check it out. I mean, Bowie plays, and this sort of kind of in some ways sort of fits in with sort of the Ziggy Stardust whole, starman persona. But he plays the lead character, who is basically a man from another planet, whose planet is sort of dying, and he needs water, and so he travels to Earth, and is going to develop a spaceship to take water back to his home planet. That's the short version. It's a strange film.
That was one of the movies when we first got HBO in in our house, and suddenly we'd come. It's like, what's this HBO thing, And but one of the movies that was on pretty regular rotation on their schedule in those very early days of HBO was this movie, The Man Who Fell to the Earth, and and David Bowie was was in it. This was a couple years later, but yes, an interestingly weird movie.
Well, and I mean, I guess we're talking about it. I mean, one of the things that happens in the movie is this Thomas Newton is the name of the character, and played by David Bowie, and he gets corrupted by various things that humans are involved in. He becomes addicted to television and alcohol and sex. And there's some because the first time I ever saw any of the movie was on TV at home on HBO back then, and there's some deviant sexual behavior. Deviant is maybe a strong word, but let's say unhealthy sexual behavior that develops between Mr. Newton and his earthly paramour. But one of the, it's interesting because the movie portrays how some human behavior was corrupting to this alien. At the time that this movie was being filmed in 1975, by all accounts, David Bowie was seriously addicted to cocaine.
Yeah.
And David Bowie once said in an interview, he was talking about drug use during that time, and he mentioned that I have some incredible gaps in memory because of all the drugs I was using. And he said, for example, I do not remember any of 1975.
Yeah.
Not 1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this album was recorded between September and November of 1975.
And as it turned out, a very busy year for him. You talked about he'd had this previous album, which was pretty successful. It had his first mega hit and that type of thing. He'd performed in this movie, and then he recorded this Station to Station album, which we're going to be talking about, all in a year that he doesn't remember, which is, I mean, pretty phenomenal when you take a look at it. This was the beginning of his transition out of that. I also think it's important, the complexities of David Bowie's personas. It's always been kind of hard for even very, following fans of his to really get your arms around what was he thinking, what was he trying to do with these personas. Was it, and this was a particularly confused transition, because clearly one of the reasons that he would have been in the lead as far as when they were thinking about who's going to play this guy, I mean, David Bowie, his Ziggy Stardust character, I mean, matched well with that, okay? However, he was given license in this movie to be whatever type of, he was allowed to set the tone and the design, and he actually kind of portrayed himself more as the European hipster than he did. So he was kind of setting up his persona, which would, start to crystallize in Station to Station, which we'll talk about, and then, to your point, really came to fruition in this Berlin trilogy. He was kind of working that out while he was playing in this movie that he got because of his Ziggy Stardust. I mean, a lot of complexities going on here, and the whole time he's so fucked up he doesn't even remember it, right? Just a lot going on in David Bowie's life at this particular time.
And prior to the international success of kind of the Ziggy Stardust character, persona, whatever, he was brought up in London, the London area. Yeah. May have been from Brixton or something like that. He was from the London area, and then after he became sort of a more internationally known musician. He spent time in the United States and may have lived in like New York City, but it was only relatively it wasn't that long prior to the recording of this album that he spent any amount of time in Los Angeles or like
Yeah.
Hollywood, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And David Bowie did not have a favorable opinion of Los Angeles
Yeah.
as a place.
Yeah.
And it was like the sort of place where you would end up addicted to cocaine.
Yeah.
And apparently he didn't really like it. And this album was recorded in Los Angeles. But it was, and some of the lyrical content suggests that he was thinking, it's time to get back to Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've come to the United States and
Well,
I
and
spent some
he
time
moved to
around
LA
here.
to do the movie, right? I mean, he was more. You talked about he was in the Philadelphia scene, and he was a little more on the East Coast. He moved to LA to do the movie. That's where they're doing the filming, and I'd agree with you. All of his subsequent commentary about that time, and even some of the stuff coming in this content that we're going to be talking about, points to the fact that he was not a big fan of LA or the LA scene.
Yeah. The movie was actually shot on location in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. But in any case, he kind of got he was spending time in Los Angeles, and his sort of locus of activity sort of went to the West Coast from the East Coast, and so in any case, it's a very strange situation. You've got an album that was recorded that Bowie doesn't really later in his life didn't remember the recording. But in some ways, it's one of his more interesting albums. Now, before, like I mentioned, hearing, when like junior high, that neck of the woods, hearing, Fame, Golden Years, and I can remember seeing some of the albums, like Low, Heroes, and seeing them at the record store, but I wasn't necessarily tuned in to David Bowie at the time that those records were coming out. I mean, I'd heard the song Heroes, and whatnot, but and I'd heard like Sound and Vision from Berlin, or from Low, I mean, but I just wasn't tuned into David Bowie. I did get the album at one point, like around when I first started college. I got an album, the Changes One Bowie, which is basically a greatest hits type compilation, and it had Fame and Golden Years on it, and it had Ziggy Stardust, Space Oddity, Suffragette City, and all just the hits from the other albums. Gene Genie, Rebel, stuff like that. But I hadn't really immersed myself in any of the albums that had come out afterwards. I mean, the first LP that I remember seeing at the record store was this one, Station to Station, and this and that. It wasn't until later that I had to poke into it in order to, recognize which album cover the other material came from. But the point I'm building up to is that it was a mutual friend of ours, who, this would have been when I was early in college, maybe like my second year in college, played the live version of the song Station to Station off of the Stage album, which came out in between Heroes and Lodger, when Adrian Belew was playing in Bowie's band for the first time. And I had never heard the studio version of the song Station to Station. And I just remember thinking, this is interesting. This is something I've got to check out. And so at some point I ended up picking up that album, that live album, Stage, And then I started to acquire the full albums, going all the way back to like, The Man Who Sold the World, which came
Mm-hmm.
right before Hunky Dory. And Station to Station, the opening track of the album, the opening track of side one, is really one of David Bowie's in my opinion, most interesting songs, and
Mm-hmm.
is very different from anything he'd done really up to this point. And I guess before delving into the songs themselves, I do have a copy of the record. It's a very
Yeah.
simple cover. There's no gatefold. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a picture of black and white photo of David Bowie, and then it just says station to station along the top.
Yep.
There's no spaces between the words. The photo is from the movie The Man Who Fell to Earth. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the back is the songs. No spaces
Yep.
between the words, and that's it. Nothing about, produced by so and so or who the
Yep.
musicians were. Just that. And at least the copy that I've got, there's nothing on the dust sleeve inside. It's just white
Mm-hmm.
paper. So very straightforward, very austere
Yeah.
compared to
Just the
his
basics.
his albums up to that point. But in any case, there are three tracks on side one that we're going to talk about. The first track is the title track, Station to Station, which is about 10 minutes long. Apparently, the longest track, like studio track, that David Bowie ever recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are two other songs on the side, Golden Years, which has been referred to and was a kind of a big radio hit. Many people may have heard that. And then a final track on the side called "Word on a Wing."
Mm-hmm.
And so there's only three tracks on the side, but like I say, Station to Station is 10 minutes long. Golden Years is about 4 minutes long, and then Word on a Wing is 6 minutes long. So you get your
Yeah.
20 minutes of
Yeah.
music out of the side. And one of the and so let's kind of delve into it. The first song is called Station to Station, and at the very beginning, and I've got a number of clips because this is a longer song, and there's a bunch of changes that go through it. It's
Yeah.
kind of not unlike, like Paul McCartney, Band on the Run. It's like there's a number of different songs. Like the style of the music changes a number of times, and it's very similar. Now this song is very different. It's nothing like Band on the Run.
Yeah.
But it kind of changes
Comes in different
styles
parts. Yeah.
a couple of times. And now at the very beginning is the sound, and it's basically the sound of like a train, a locomotive that's just starting up and then starts to move faster. But it's got a very synthetic, icy quality to it. And I don't know how much, or I don't know how they created this sound. I assume by some kind of synthesizer.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the sound may have been created by one of the guitar players doing something and then putting it through some device. It doesn't matter. It sounds like a train, and it goes on for a little bit. And then some instruments start to come in, and the first track we're going to play is basically from the end of this train sound into sort of this relatively drawn out musical transition into the first sort of segment of the song. And let's listen to that, and then we can continue on the other side.
Let's do it.
All right. Now, and what we just heard there is basically the transition from this synthesized, train sound that I described earlier to what is the musical arrangement for the first segment of this song. And it just had a different feel. And I think even though this album was recorded in Los Angeles, it has a more European feel, just the music. And I guess before we kind of continue, a very interesting fact, in my opinion, the keyboard player, the piano player on this album is Roy Bittan of the E Street Band. And up until this point, I mean, this guy's claim to fame was playing with Bruce Springsteen. And, we could talk a lot about Bruce Springsteen and David Bowie. Certainly in 1975, very different performers, very different people, very different backgrounds, very different music. But Roy Bittan is one of the musicians. Also playing in the sessions was a rhythm guitarist, or a guitarist named Carlos Alomar, who had previously played with David Bowie. He played on the previous album. Another guitarist named Earl Slick, who I don't know if he played on any studio albums with David Bowie, but he had toured with David Bowie on the David Live album, which came out prior to this. And then there was a drummer and a bass player who, along with Carlos Alomar, ended up forming his basic backing band all the way through the Berlin trilogy, basically for the rest of the 70s for the most part. So that's who was playing on this music, and the record was co-produced by David Bowie and someone named Harry Maslin, who I don't necessarily know a lot about, but and it was recorded in a studio in Los Angeles. But in any case,
I was just going to say, I love the way this portion that you played there, sets up how slowly this song builds. You talked about the starting with the sound of a train, and I think that's what lends that European kind of starts to lend that European kind of style. Trains are so much more of a part of European life, right? We picture them from our past and our history, and then you got to wait for a train in your car from time to time. But other than that, most people don't have a whole lot of interaction with trains. Whereas on the European side, so many people ride on a train to go to work. So many people are that's a major form of transportation across and around the country, or across and around the continent. It's just a bigger part. So it's interesting when it starts out, you are kind of thinking, is that a train? And then, yes, it sounds like a train. And the portion that you played was, as we start to get into the music part, that builds as well. Also very slowly. It's kind of like you don't understand exactly what it's going to look like when it finally comes to pass, but you can feel the little elements, that alternating tone going back and forth, some bass coming in, and then the way that it builds up. It's this very unique kind of sound. I love the way this song starts out, right, and kind of gets us to, this is the song. It's an experience just getting there, though.
The vocals. The singing in this song doesn't start until about 3 minutes into the track.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've been listening to sound for 3 minutes before there's any vocals, and the beginning of this, there's a different feel to the. Because this is guitar music. I mean, once, sort of the tail end of the clip that we just listened to, it sort of settled into a guitar-based, sound.
Yeah.
And it kind of has that Space Invader feel to it, that otherworldly quality, but it's different than, the Ziggy Stardust. I mean, okay, here's a space alien that comes to tip humanity off that, quit building bombs and start dancing more, whatever, that's however you want to characterize, the Starman,
Yeah.
the Starman story. So this still has that kind of, this music sounds like something you'd hear on another planet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Even though that, I don't think that's not what Bowie is getting
No.
at with this song. I don't believe at all. But it in some ways the music has more of an otherworldly quality to it than music that he made specifically about a space invader.
Yeah.
Um, and So in any case, now, so that sets the table for this song, and there are some lyrics that accompany this arrangement that we heard the beginning of at the end of that last clip. And why don't we listen to another clip of when the vocals actually come in, and because this is an unusual song lyrically.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be difficult if you don't kind of poke your nose into it to figure out what in the fuck he's trying to talk about or get at. But let's listen to some of the lyrics and whatnot in this next clip, and we'll continue after.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. Well, and the music had already kind of started on the first clip we listened to. The second clip basically gets at the vocals that occur during this segment of the song, and those starting lyrics, "The return of the thin white Duke," and given the way that David Bowie looked at that time. And part of that was because of the lifestyle that he was living, and he wasn't eating as much. He was doing a lot of cocaine, and so he just kind of became a little more spindly than you might otherwise have looked. And he started wearing like black trousers, a white sort of dressy shirt, and then a black vest, or as they would say in England, waistcoat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the persona that he maintained for the most part through the rest of the 70s and these albums that make up the Berlin trilogy that I referred to. And apparently where that came from, the term Thin White Duke, is that David Bowie had either written or was planning on writing a collection of short stories, the title of which was The Return of the Thin White Duke.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also consistent with how he looked at that time. He had this urbane, very European look,
mm-hmm.
and he was thin, he was white, and had sort of a regal sort of appearance when he felt like it.
When he felt like showering.
Now you heard the lyrics there, and Now, what is station to station about? We mentioned trains, a train station going from one. Well, that's not what he was talking about. I think that it's not a controversial a thing, but that the term station to station is referring to the stations of the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that that David Bowie, had either had a book of short stories or a collection of short stories that he'd written or that he was intending to write called The Return of the Thin White Duke. One thing that David Bowie was well known for was he was always reading something.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of an intellectual character. He was always reading stuff, and like he took like 100 books with him, to California when he was going to go out there and make this movie and stuff like that. And so he was reading all sorts of shit. Excuse me. And one of the things that he was reading about was, and this comes from the Kabbalah, which is some writings that are part of the Jewish mystical tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a thing called the Tree of Life that was constructed. It's like a diagram, and it has these different. Now the Stations of the Cross, referring to Christian doctrine, and there are like 12 Stations of the Cross, and those are basically just like 12 scenes leading up to the crucifixion. When he first is carrying the cross, and then he falls down, and then someone helps him, and these various events leading all the way up to Jesus being crucified and then taken down and whatnot. There's 12 stations of the cross, and this diagram that was part of the Kabbalah is referred to as the Tree of Life, and it's a diagram, and there's different connections between different things in this diagram. You can get on the internet and just put in Kabbalah Tree of Life, and you can find it pretty easily. This getting into a detailed discussion of all this stuff, all this spirituality, is beyond the confines of this podcast. But in the lyrics where he says, "Here we are, one magical movement from Cather to Malkuth." And until I actually got on the internet to look at the lyrics, I didn't decipher what the fuck he was talking about.
What is this guy talking about?
But that's what he's talking about. And this Tree of Life diagram that was developed as part of this Jewish mysticism, the highest realm at its crown is Kethar. And the realm of the earth and matter at its base, at the base of the diagram, the base of the Tree of Knowledge, is the Malkuth.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what does that all mean? Who knows? But
that's what he was reading about, so he popped.
That's what he was reading about, and one of the things that supposedly David Bowie was known for doing back in these days when he was he'd have some thought, and he'd write it down on a napkin or a piece of paper, and then he'd put it somewhere, and then he collected those things and he'd use them for ideas and string them together into sometimes clearly thought out, other times a little bit more abstract, but so in any case, there's the Stations of the Cross and the various components of the Tree of Life that comes from Jewish mysticism. And there are also some fairly specific references to things involving Aleister Crowley, who anyone who's listened to Ozzy Osbourne or
you've heard a little bit about Aleister Crowley,
or read anything about like Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page and whatnot, has learned about Aleister Crowley. But the throwing darts in lovers' eyes, apparently that was something that Aleister Crowley's followers did. They threw darts at their lovers. And there's later on in the lyrics that we'll hear in a later clip, he refers to white stains, which can be interpreted as something to do with cocaine. But there was also a book that Aleister Crowley wrote called White Stains. So I mean, he's referring to all this. He's referring to occult stuff, Stations of the Cross, the Kabbalah from Jewish mysticism. His head is in a weird place. And
when it comes down to it, it's in a weird place. But I mean, on the same token, you do like clearly that was this reading that he was doing was influential on him and kind of trying to wrap these different concepts into these lyrics. What I find is interesting is normally you have you've got a desire to connect with your audience, and you've done a lot of reading in your life, as much as just about anybody that I know. And, it still is something that as you listen to these lyrics isn't obvious to you what he's talking about. So I think that it's just an interesting choice, and someone that maybe wasn't as concerned about, am I pushing what they're buying? Am I selling what they're buying? Or is he thinking this is what is on my mind right now? And either way, it still ended up with some weird stuff to figure out as you try to dig into this. Because even with the understanding of what you talked about right there, you put that back into these lyrics, and it's still awfully weird.
well, and this album came out. There are two things that started to happen later in the 70s after this album came out, among other things. But one of them was punk, and one of them was the sort of popular culture emergence of disco. This is before anybody, your real punk rock had started or any kind of new wave, and it was before Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of, even though lyrically this is kind of inscrutable, it's just musically, he's sort of foreshadowing things. In this whole, Berlin trilogy, there was a genre of music where there was stuff, Tangerine Dream, Kraftwerk, and there were some other bands, and the sort of the general label was Kraut rock, because a number of the artists were German, and so he was on the one hand, he wasn't necessarily concerned about how the popular culture was going to, want to hear what he was talking about in terms of these abstract, spiritual, occult-like things. But musically, he was sort of anticipating trends. He's talking about these things involving Aleister Crowley, the Stations of the Cross, and the Kabbalah. Now, the song goes through basically two more sections in the way that I look at it. And let's listen to a clip. There's what I'll call the middle section of the song, and we can talk about it on the other side. we've moved from the first section into a middle section, and at the end of the track, the clip that we just listened to, you can hear the beginning of what is really the final segment of the song. And those lyrics there: once there were mountains on mountains, and once there were sunbirds to soar with, and once I could never be down. So it's sort of like, here's this guy, he's out in Los Angeles, he doesn't like it, he's addicted to cocaine, he's just made a movie, he doesn't remember any of it, and he sort of, he goes from all this mystical weirdness to, what happened to the old days, got to keep searching and searching. Oh, what will I be believing? And who will connect me with love? Wonderful, wonder who, wonder when. I mean, and have you sought fortune, evasive and shy? Drink to the men who protect you and I. Drink, drink, drain your glass, raise your glass high. Mm-hmm. I mean, now suddenly it's gone from a very inscrutable is the word that I used earlier. He's talking about all this weird mystical shit, and now it's sort of like, hey,
celebrate.
Why the long face?
Yeah.
Let's party. But not but like raise your glass high, more like a beer hall party than a cocaine den.
Yeah.
Party.
Yeah.
And so
different parties.
Different parties. And then at the end, and so those are the lyrics are kind of like taking us out of the doom and gloom, and putting us back into what really is at ground zero, a rock and roll record.
Yeah.
And you can hear the very beginning of the final segment of the song, which is really they're rocking out.
Yeah.
And we've got there's one final clip I'll want to play where there's just some actors, lead guitar. I mean, it is just good, hard rock and roll.
And it is interesting. This song, I mean, I talked a little earlier about how it builds very slowly from a quiet start and builds up. And then when you start to hear that there's all these kind of like mystical references in the lyrics, you start to envision like a single guy going through his thoughts. But that is not what this song comes off as. You picture a group, lots of people, the raise your glass, the at a live performance, there's a feeling of like many people. This isn't one person alone with their thoughts. That's not what this song sounds like. It sounds like a group event, a shared experience is going on, which is one of the things I really like about it.
Yeah. And the lyrics at the beginning of the final section of the song that we heard the beginning of at the end of that last clip, it's not the side effects of the cocaine. So he's explicitly referring to the effect that cocaine has had on him, and he's gone from this doom and gloom experience to this once there were mountains on mountains. I've got to keep searching. A much more raise your glass high, a much more hopeful attitude, frame of mind. And it's not the side effects of the cocaine.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that it must be love. It's too late to be grateful. It's too late to be late again. It's too late to be hateful. The European canon is here. I must be only one in a million. I won't let the day pass without her. And that's basically the rest of the lyrics are more or less a repeat of those things.
Yeah.
And there's some additional lyrics here, but that's basically the substance of the rest of the song. And so it's not the side effects. He's referring explicitly to the effects of cocaine. he's hoping that love is going to find its way through the gloom and find him. And then he says the European canon, like Canon,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the canonical whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's also, maybe it's time to get out of LA and go back home.
Yeah.
And it's really it's a that middle section combined with this, what we heard at the very end of the last clip, it's triumphant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I buy it.
And maybe before we continue our discussion, let's play the final clip from this song, which shows some good old rockin' electric guitar music, and then we'll finish up on this song on the other side.
Let's rock.
Well, now that's that was instrumental basically. So that doesn't necessarily add anything to the discussion. Other than that, by the time this song wraps up, Bowie and his guys they rock out.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't necessarily the hardest rockin' music that anyone's ever heard.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you think back to the beginning of this song, at that with just that just sort of plodding otherworldly sound, this is just so much more. It's brighter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I wouldn't call it bright necessarily, but brighter than the beginning of the song, and they're just rocking out. And so it's a 10-minute song which takes you from God knows what into this strange mystical environment where he's trying to get somewhere but he doesn't know how or what. Some hope starts to creep into things. He realizes that he's got to quit being on coke all the time. Look for love back at home. And puts the cherry on the sundae or the icing on the cake with just some good old electric rock and roll guitar.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I thought about this song, and there's times I look at it and think this song could use a little editing, right? It's 10 minutes long. You pointed out the fact. I mean, the first minute of the song is the train kind of going, and then you've got another minute of the song which is really trying to develop that musical rhythm and theme that's going to take us through that whole first half, right, of the song. But I've, especially having listened to it a number of times more recently when we're getting ready for this, it's like you're going to want that stuff, especially if you haven't heard this before and you're going to sit and listen to it. That slow build into what we have in the first half of the song, and then I agree with you 100%. We really kind of switch it up, and the whole mood and hope and excitement and that kind of thing that the song ends with, the rock that it's there. It's better because of everything that you went to, right? Your mood continues to build throughout this song. It's like an orchestrated performance more than just a song. It's like an opera almost, the way that the emotions kind of build up. So again, I've thought at times it's like, yeah, could you edit some of this out? Would this be a better 7-minute song? Well, maybe, right? But the experience of listening to the whole thing, the way that it's done, very intentional. Whether Bowie remembers it or not, they did a good job of the way they create and build the songs, and it adds to the experience about how you have to kind of wait for each of these sections to materialize. It's a complex song that works.
Yeah, and it was unlike anything that David Bowie had done before.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think David Bowie at heart, was a rock and roller.
Yeah.
And while and the Ziggy Stardust persona was a rock and roller. I mean, just was an explicitly a rock and roller. Now, I think that this is the music on this album is good rock and roll. I mean, the end of this song, the clip we just listened to, that's rock and roll.
Yeah.
And Golden Years is a more rock than rock and roll, but I mean that was a song that you could tap your foot and dance to.
Yeah.
And like on the second side of the album, I mean TVC15, that moves along kind of nicely.
Yeah.
The song Stay on side 2, I mean that's a good guitar oriented rock song. But all that said, the Thin White Duke as a character was not a rock and roller.
Yeah.
He was a more artsy fartsy type. So this song it's a much artier composition than really anything. I mean, and David Bowie was arty to begin with.
Yeah.
From the very beginning. But here it was just on a different level. I mean, this was a more arty type piece of music.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of his more interesting songs. And it just this album would be entirely different without it.
Absolutely.
I mean, he cut ties with the past very effectively with this album, and particularly this song, in my opinion. So I think
then started the song off with this sound that was very different. This is you're not like listening to to a rehash of anything else, right? Very different type feel and just sound to the to the rhythm. And we'll get into some songs. Obviously, the Golden Years. You can draw a line to Fame. You can see some similarities in that that lower kind of funky kind of stuff, and we'll see the same thing with the closing track. But this one, you're not gonna, he didn't draw this one from any other well. This is fresh.
All right. Well, I mean, let's move into Golden Years.
Sure.
And this is a much more straightforward song. I mean, it was big on the radio. People that listen to classic rock radio stations are probably going to have heard this song. And before we play a clip, one interesting fun fact about this song is apparently David Bowie originally intended this song for Elvis Presley.
Really?
Yeah. Now, when I hear this song, thinking back to when I first heard this song, Elvis Presley is not what it makes me think of.
No.
But and apparently, I mean, he was a big enough star at that point where he was able to get Elvis's attention, and Elvis declined. I mean, I don't think it was a blow off or anything, but he declined to didn't want to do it. But anyway, why don't we listen to a clip? And this clip I've got prepared is a little longer than some of the clips we play, but this one clip will basically give you, for those that haven't heard it, the substance of Golden Years. So let's hear it, and then we'll continue our discussion after.
Sounds good.
taking you nowhere. Angel, come love me, baby. Look at that sky, life's begun. Nights are warm and the days are young. Come love me, baby. There's my baby lost, that's all. Once I'm begging you, save a little soul. Go, come love me, baby. Last night they loved you, opening doors and pulling some strings. Angel, come love me, baby. Then walk luck and you looked in time. Never look back, walk tall, act fine. Come love me, baby. I'll stick with you, baby, for 1,000 years. Nothing's gonna touch you in these golden years. Golden years. Come love me, baby. Some of these days and it won't be long. Gonna drive back down where you once belonged. In the back of a dream car, 20 foot long. Don't cry, my sweet, don't break my heart. Doing all right, you've gotta get smart. Wish upon day upon day. I believe, oh Lord, I'll believe all the way. Run for the shadows, run for the shadows, run for the shadows in these golden years. There's my baby lost, that's all. Once I'm begging you, save a little golden years.
All right. Now, the very beginning of that song, you've got this interesting beat, and you've got this.
Yeah.
It's guitar oriented,
Yeah.
and you don't know, is this rock, is this rhythm and blues, is this disco, is this, and then when you hear the vocals come in, the golden years, gold, wop wop wop.
Yeah.
Well, what is this doo-wop? Is this 50s? Well, what is this? I mean, there's
Yeah.
all these different types of music that are kind of evoked by just the beginning of the song. And so just right off the bat, I think I said earlier, this song is both cutting edge and retro
Yeah.
at the same time. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and
the best.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And it is, when you're listening to it, it's like, well, what is this? I don't hear Elvis with this. I hear more like the Brothers Johnson or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially that boogie bass kind of feel, that doo-wop kind of thing that it comes out with. That's the kind of the more R&B direction is where I first go to. But then the way that the vocals come in, kind of like, well, kind of pulls you out. Again, neither of these am I seeing Elvis, right?
Yeah.
In that. So I don't have any question mark about why Elvis might have taken a pass on it, but I'm glad David did it, because his style, it comes together when you're finally like, what is this? Is this? Whatever it comes to, it works, and it creates kind of a groove. You want to kind of move back and forth. The rocking part of rock and roll, right, comes to mind when you're listening to this song.
And after he starts singing, I agree with you that just the music before the vocals come in, it doesn't. I mean, you feel, is there some R&B here? Is there some disco, or is this just regular rock and roll? Where is this going? But there's definitely a black music is some of the inspiration for this song. But and as far as lyrically, this is sort of like he's trying to encourage presumably his the singer is singing to a female paramour. And trying to be encouraging. Don't let me hear you say life's taking you nowhere. Look at that sky, life's begun. Nights are warm and days are young.
Yeah.
There's my baby lost, that's all. Once I'm begging you, save her little soul. Golden years.
Mm-hmm.
Last night they loved you, opening doors and pulling some strings. I walked luck and you looked in time. Never look back, walk tall, act fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's and I'll stick with you, baby, for 1,000 years. Nothing's gonna touch you in these golden years. It's not the most profound lyrics, certainly not as complex or as literary
Yeah.
as the last song. It's not down in the dumps. He's not feeling sorry for himself because of whatever problems he's having in his life. Nothing's going to touch you in these golden years. It's like, hey, this is the best time of your life. You've got to
Yeah.
enjoy it.
And the words are the words are delivered really well. Those lyrics that you talked about, I mean, he's really dealing them out quickly, right? The words come. It's very easy to understand. It's not like you can hear what he's saying, yet he's delivering the words very quickly. It's almost like dealing cards, right? He's it just and it's almost like it's part of the music, just really well done lyrically, the way that it sounds. It kind of sucks you along with the song because of the way that he's singing on top of this weird, just kind of eclectic mix of music.
Well, and one thing I can remember about this song and about this album actually is back, like when you were in Germany, in the service, and I was living in Milwaukee with Scott. We had a handful. We had kind of a cool hipster pad, our apartment in Milwaukee, and we had a number of like keg parties where we had a fair amount of people. And, we'd move things out of the center of the living room, and we'd play music, and people would dance. There wouldn't be people dancing the whole time, but there'd be people dancing, and Scott and I, because we were the hosts, we played the music.
To pick the music.
We got to pick the music, and it wasn't always what the people who showed up at the party wanted to listen to or wanted to dance to. But on more than one occasion, I played this side at these parties that we had, and at the beginning of Station to Station, most people are thinking, this is just the typical sort of shit that Mike and Scott play. But then by the end of the song, where they're rocking out, they're like, okay, this is all right. And then Golden Years would play, and I could always find some girl at the party who would dance with me to Golden Years.
That must have been a great song.
It probably, whatever. Once the song was over, that was that. But no, it was it. So
Popular song. Popular groove.
This song was something that I thought of as that appealed to a relatively. That's why it was a successful single in 1970, in 1975 and 76. I think that it was released as a single. I think before the album was released. It was recorded at the same time as the other material, but I think it was released a little earlier as a single. But so whether it came out in 1975, the album itself came out in January of 1976. But in any case, there's a reason why it was such a big hit. But that is a memory of this song that I will always have. And I don't know, lyrically, it's fairly straightforward. There's in the bridge there where some of these days, and it won't be long, going to drive back down where it wants to be long. In the back of a dream car, 20 foot long. It's sort of like, hey baby, you want to ride in my limousine? Everything's going to be okay. Don't cry, my sweet, don't break my heart. Doing all right, but you got to get smart. So it's a much more upbeat, positive, accessible song than the title track. But just because it's a little bit more palatable for mass consumption, I don't think it's any less of an accomplishment artistically because of what I said at the front end. It just combines something that's new, space age, but has that retro kind of doo-wop 50s feel all at the same time. And combining these, whether it's R&B, disco, whatever, it's just it was quintessential David Bowie in my mind, going back as long as I've really been aware of the guy to begin with.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely very popular, but this is not formulaic pop music, right? This was popular. It hit the right nerve of a lot of people, and it didn't follow any type of conventional, formula to just pound out a song. Really popular. I mean, I'm sure most people have heard the song, at one point or another, even if they're not big Bowie fans. But yeah, just a good tune, and this is a song when you're driving down the road, you want to have the window down, your hand out the window, kind of tapping on the side of the car as you're driving with the volume way up on this. Perfect song for that.
Yeah. So, in any case, Golden Years.
Yeah.
Well, we can move on. The final track on the side is called Word on a Wing. And the style it's different than either Station to Station or Golden Years. Nothing surprising from David Bowie. I mean, I think that one could maybe argue that if you listen to all three of the tracks on this side, that Word on a Wing is the one that would have been most easily pegged as a David Bowie song by people who'd been listening to him for a long time. But why don't we just, this is another one where maybe a little bit longer clip than we sometimes play, but just to give everyone an idea of this song, because this one is not as well known as Golden Years. Why don't we listen to that, and then we can continue our discussion on the other side.
Okay.
In this age of grand illusion, you walked into my life out of my dreams. I don't need another chain, still forced away into my scheme of things. You say of grand illusion, you walked into my life out of my dreams. Sweet angel, born once again for me. Sweet angel, born once again for me. Oh,
All right. And that basically gives you the primary verse and chorus for this song, and basically that the substance of the entire song you can glean from that clip there. I mean, and it's really and I think David Bowie said later that, you know, when he looked at this song, that he was looking for something other than what his brain was telling him as he was going through this experience of being addicted to cocaine, going to Los Angeles, being involved in this film, and whatnot. And I at one point in 1980, about 5 years after this album was recorded, he even kind of sort of chided himself for thinking that you know, just kind of a conventional you know, Christian prayer was how he would have, what he would have been willing to do to to change where he was at. I mean, because David Bowie, he's a lot more at home with the shit at the beginning of Station to Station, and the, you know, looking at things as a much more mystical, unconventional, you know, left of center sort of things. But be that as it may, the song itself, it's really a very sort of wistful, and it sounds just so sincere. Lord, I kneel and offer you my word on a wing, and I'm trying hard to fit among your scheme of things. It's safer than a strange land, but I still care for myself, and I don't stand in my own light. Lord, my prayer flies like a word on a wing. Does my prayer fit in with your scheme of things? Where he says it's safer than a strange land. And I think that reference to a strange land is specifically referring to the movie, the Man Who Fell to Earth, because the story in Man Who Fell to Earth has some similarities, and just the whole idea has some very specific similarities to the story in Heinlein's A Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah.
And so when he refers to a strange land, it's like, I offer you my word on a wing. He's praying.
Yeah.
I'm trying hard to fit among your scheme of things. It's safer than a strange land, but I still care for myself, and I don't stand in my own light. I mean, it's this guy who's like, look, I feel like someone from another planet, and I want to feel like I'm at home. So it really is a very, in my humble opinion, it's and I'm not a religious person, but it strikes me as just a very genuine, sincere plea for an answer, a better path. And I think that after David Bowie kind of got past, you know, he got past his cocaine addiction and started to live a little more healthy lifestyle. I'm sure that he didn't completely give up some of that sort of nightlife type activity, but it certainly wasn't as excessive as it apparently was during 1975 when he was spending a lot of time in Los Angeles.
And I think that idea of returning to home. I mean, ultimately, he went back to Europe after this stuff happened, and ultimately did, you know, work on his addictions and that type of thing, and came out the other side, which is good. Although he may not remember the songwriting sessions for this, it's clear he can see, because in subsequent interviews and stuff, this is like his thought process of trying to get out of this place that he was in, which was a bad place, and he's now looking back and feels lucky he survived. I think this not only, when you talk about home, it didn't just draw back the idea of the place of home, it did draw from some of the previous music that he'd done. There's a lot of this of this type of sound. You said it's a Bowie kind of song. You can draw a lot of parallels between songs on Young Americans. I mean, I think of the song like "Somebody Up There Likes Me." That's a very similar song to this song. Same kind of feel. It's a different song. I mean, but that
Sort of
feel
more
and the way that,
the more gospel side of soul.
yeah, and it just it is you can hear that he's that going to something comfortable to try to express what he's what he's thinking here, which was, I'd really like to survive to get the hell out of where I'm at right now. And also interesting that you talked about The Strange Land being the movie. He was still on the hook at this time, even though he'd completed the filming of the movie, for the soundtrack to this. They before he did the soundtrack to the Man Who Fell to Earth, he did this album. So in the back of his mind, he's thinking, I got to get the music. Which, by the way, he produced some stuff, and the director and producers of the movie passed on what he came back with. There was very little that he actually composed for the soundtrack, but I'm sure that through part of this process too, that he was still in this strange land, because he was responsible to be working on the soundtrack afterwards. And I imagine he saw that as the end point. As soon as I'm done with that, I can get the hell out of here, right? And which he did, and I think is came out a lot better.
When I think that when you look at some of the music on his next album after Station to Station, which was Low, and side 2 of the Low album was entirely instrumental. I mean, no, there was some vocals, but it just, there weren't lyrics. In the conventional sense. It's just, they weren't songs; they were pieces of music. And listen, and there's the Berlin trilogy, all of those 3 albums, all 6 of the sides from those 3 albums would be material that we could cover on this podcast. I mean, there's a lot of interesting music. I think one of the reasons, I assume, I don't know, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I assume that the music that he was coming up with was more like the stuff that ended up on Low, which would be more like capturing the world of the alien, of the man who fell to Earth. Whereas I think that the music that they actually used was more to capture the New Mexico human environment in which the character found himself and was having these difficulties finding, keeping his way amongst the Earthlings, and their various traps, with television and alcohol and sex and blah blah blah. And this, and the music on this song doesn't necessarily mesh with that. It kind of falls in the mushy middle between those things. So, but I mean, just the very beginning of the lyrics that we heard in that clip. In this age of grand delusion, you walked into my life out of my dreams. I don't need another change. Still, you forced a way into my scheme of things. I mean, it's because he talks about my scheme of things and your scheme of things. In these lyrics, and it's so he's basically, he's I want to find a way where, and he doesn't specifically use the name of God. He uses the name Lord, and it suggests a conventional, heaven, don't have to question everything in heaven or hell. I mean, it suggests a conventional Christian form of religion is what it expresses to me. And whether that's the Church of England where he was from, or the Catholic Church, I don't know. It's certainly not that specific, but there's enough lyrical content to suggest a relatively conventional Christian spirituality. And I think later in life he looked at that, like, to think that I was looking at something that conventional is an illustration of how in how much despair I really was.
Yeah.
And David Bowie is not someone who is down on spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously very into it,
Yeah.
but I think that the way that he is into religion and spirituality is something a little more involved than just specifically sort of a more conventional Christian type of
Yeah.
spirituality. But certainly the lyrics to me, and just listening to this song, it sounds like he very much wants whatever peace and enlightenment, illumination might come from just meshing his scheme with the Christian God scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And interesting song.
Yeah.
And very different from either of the other two songs on this side in terms of the style of the music and the lyrical content. Very different, but compelling. All in just as it's just as compelling in a different way.
Yeah, and I mean the notion that this is similar to a lot of other Bowie music. I mean, a lot of that music was good music, and it was fun to listen to, and interesting themes and that type of thing, and that's what we got here. I think it was a great way to end the side. The first track, it's long and there is a lot to it, right? To try to sink your mind into that and get your arms around that is a good day's work in itself. Then you have a kind of a big mega hit in Golden Years, and then we wrap it up with just with a good Bowie song. And I mean, it really does. It creates a side that's got a lot to it, and quite frankly, a lot of good to it. Three big good tracks.
Yeah. So in any case, I think this is one of David Bowie's more important albums. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite David Bowie album. There's probably a couple that I would place higher. But for anyone who has any interest in David Bowie that hasn't heard this album, it's a must. And the second side, also 3 tracks, worthy of a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another situation where all 3 songs are different. TVC15, Stay, Wild as the Wind is all 3 of those songs are different.
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone with even a latent interest in David Bowie to here's this, like I say, there's the earlier David Bowie, and for me, David Bowie, I mean, after Scary Monsters, I mean, and Let's Dance was very popular, very successful, but I mean, David Bowie,
It's a different Bowie.
Different
Bowie that day. I mean, as you're looking at David Bowie, and as you start to explore or learn about the guy, this whole notion of these personas that he captured and that he lived in his music and his performance was pretty important. And this was at one of those transition points as he was, moving from the Starman, Ziggy Stardust type personality to the White Duke, which took him for a while from there. So getting an understanding and feeling this transition point, I think it's just an important part of his career. Certainly one of his best albums and a great side.
And the transitional aspect of the album, I think, is the most important, because the 4 albums that followed this, the 4 studio albums, Low, Heroes, Lodger, and Scary Monsters, all 4 of those albums, very high quality, not as popular. Heroes and there were some songs on the radio from Scary Monsters, and DJ off Lodger got some airplay, but artistically, musically, even though they weren't quite as big as some of the hits that he's had previously, this was a transition into what was his most artistically realized period of his recording career, in my opinion, and an important album for David Bowie. that I would
An
encourage
important
anyone to
album.
listen to.
Important album from a great artist and a really great side of music, Mike, and great conversation.
All right. All right. I agree. And Mark, we will talk to you next time.